my name is Emery Martinez.
I'm Mr. Brown.
All right, and I'll be asking him a couple questions for the interview. First, in my research, I found that the way our parents interact with us at a young age affect how we give and accept love. Do you find that to be true in yourself?
Yeah, I would definitely say so actually. And the big reason I know this is because I know in my family, I grew up single mom. My mom was the most affectionate, like hugging and kissing and stuff like that. We told each other we loved each other. But like hugging and like physical affection wasn't big. And I remember, as I met other people, more specifically like my first girlfriend in high school, like her family, like you hug people hello, you hug people goodbye. That is not the norm in my family, like at all. So definitely so. That's something that, and I wouldn't even say I'm like not like a physically affectionate person, but I think I am less than others because of that.
And in my research, the authors argue that in accordance to Erikson's theory of psychosocial development, identity versus role confusion, it is vital to build a sense of self before having a successful relationship. Do you find that to be evident in yourself?
What kind of like relationship?
What you interpret as?
Okay, what I interpret as a relationship? Oh gosh. I think yes. But I guess it really depends, because I know for me personally, I think I gauged my identity. I think like I'm my own individual, my own person. But I also think like I also grew up with my high school sweetheart, and especially after college too. So I think a lot of who I became was molded with them. However, I think that I still was my own individual. And like I think I still meet people who, were fairly independent, after high school as well. So I do think it's definitely possible. But I mean, I think me, just my own personal like social, emotional relationships, like I'm my own person, but I definitely think like others help form who I am specifically, family, friends, my long-term partner, stuff like that.
Perfect. And again, in accordance to Bender's social cognitive theory, which states that individuals develop skills and behaviors through observation, what behaviors have you developed through observation of your family and friends that have impacted how you manage and navigate relationships in adulthood?
These questions are crazy. Okay, I have one for sure. And this is pretty important to me. I grew up I've never been like the biggest fan of like gender roles. I mean, I think for a variety of reasons they're toxic. And for me, I never had a consistent male role model in my life. So I think like as a man, I think I would not classify myself as like the stereotypical masculine man, which I'm okay with. And I think maybe a large part of that is because just I grew up raised by my mother, my grandmother. I've just always existed in spaces with women, and I think like ultimately what is feminine behavior, quote unquote, right, has really kind of like been, a lot of the way I behave and the way I think and the way I see the world.
All right, perfect. And finally, what have you found that led you to be most successful in relationships in adulthood?
Oh my gosh. Communication. For sure. Communication by far. And it's still something I'm working out as like I'm 25 years old. Like you wanna, I think like, and not even like in the sense of being honest, but that is a big part of it, is that understanding your emotions, communicating those fairly and honestly to the people around you that you care about. That's definitely, I think, number one. I feel like communication, you can't have a successful relationship without openly communicating with people around you. I think that's the same case even as a teacher with my students. I try to be communicative with my students, my colleagues, my friends, my family, things like that. That's super important.
Perfect. You guys heard it here first. Communication is key. All right, Martinez?
I'm Miss Medina.
I'll be interviewing Miss Medina today. All right, for the first question I got, in my research, I found that the way our parents interact with us at a young age affect how we give and accept love. Do you find that to be evident in yourself?
Oh, very much so. I think it's very evident sometimes in the way that I react, and I'm barely noticing it now, but a lot of the ways my mom interacted with me, I feel then the way I interact with others sometimes. But I also feel like it makes me also not react the way in which I grew up as well, because it's like I remember being in those instances where, you cringe and you're like, oh no, mom, stop. So I remember that too.
And in my research, the authors argue that in accordance to Erikson's theory of psychosocial development, identity versus role confusion, it is vital to build a sense of self before having a successful relationship. Do you find that to be true in yourself?
Oh, that's a great question. I think that resonates so much to me right now too. I think what I'm learning now is if you really don't know yourself, you struggle with knowing how to cope with really hard things that you're going through in life. I've noticed that with myself. I would have to say that since I was like 15, I don't think I was able to fully get to know myself and all the aspects I wish I could. And I feel like I'm barely doing that now. But I think at times I place a lot of like, I'm really hard on myself because of it, because I think back on the what ifs and the I should have, but I'm still young, but I'm in that age where I wish I was in a place where I knew better and I didn't make the mistakes that I think, I should have done when I was getting to know myself.
That's amazing to hear. And in accordance to Bender's social cognitive theory, which states that individuals develop skills and behaviors through observation, what behaviors have you developed through observation of your friends and family that have impacted how you manage and navigate relationships in adulthood?
First, I think a big one I would take from my dad, I think avoidance and like the hard things to talk about. I think I get to the point where I realize that I picked that from my parents where I kind of like hold it in, and then I blow up, right? And what I'm learning is that sometimes communication is perceived as like anger, or communication has been perceived as like I'm bickering or I'm complaining. And the older I'm becoming, I'm like, no, like this is how I feel. This is my opinion. And I was for the really longest time scared to express that because I think of what I saw my parents do.
Makes sense. And thank you for the answer. And finally, what have you found has led you to be most successful in relationships in adulthood, whether that's romantic or even platonic?
Well, for sure communication, but I think something that helps with relationships is being open to hearing or validating the other person's feelings. Because it's like no one really knows what someone's going through. So at times, people's response isn't really what they want to respond to you, but it's rather like what they're holding in and what they're going through. So I think that's just something that most people should maybe consider is, what is this person going through to be reacting this way? And it's something that's maybe not a big deal to you.
That's amazing here. When you heard it here first, folks, pay attention to what everyone's saying. Sometimes it's never really that deep, and sometimes it really is that deep. Thank you for listening. My name is Emery Martinez.
I'm Joseph Garden.
And my project today is on how to manage relationships in adulthood, and I will be interviewing Garden. Okay, so first question is, in my research, I have found that the way our parents interact with us at a young age affect how we give and accept love. Do you find that to be true in yourself?
For sure. I think that that's the start of, relationship building. We know that trauma and things like that from our childhood impact our relationships and the way we view the world. And so I think the first part of building relationships as an adult and getting older is learning to unpack those traumas and how they might impact your trust or understanding of another person. For example, my mom was a quite intense person, so little things would set her off. So I learned to kind of walk on eggshells a lot. And so it took me a long time in relationships to learn to unpack that I can trust people, that I don't have to be so afraid to just be myself around other people.
Perfect. In my research, the authors argued that in accordance to Erickson's theory of psychosocial development, identity with role confusion, it is vital to build a sense of self for having a successful relationship. Do you find that to be evident in yourself?
I do agree with that as well. There's a famous quote from RuPaul, who's a drag queen, who says, if you can't love yourself, how the hell are you going to love someone else? And it's completely true. If you can't be okay with you and know who you are and know your functions, it's really difficult to be in a relationship with someone else, because most likely, on some level, you're going to be using that person to fulfill a need that you've not been able to meet with yourself. So once you learn to kind of who you are and love yourself and expect and work on what you need to work on, and you're aware of who you are, it's way easier to engage in authentic, real relationships with people, because I'm not holding those people to standards or things that are meant to fulfill needs or voids in my own life.
Perfect. All right. And again, in accordance to Bender's social cognitive theory, which states individuals develop skills and behaviors through observation, what behaviors that you have developed through observation of your family and friends have an impact on you and how you manage and navigate relationships in adulthood?
Could you repeat that question again? Sorry, that was long.
In accordance to Bandura's social cognitive theory, which states that individuals develop skills and behaviors through observation, what behaviors have you developed through observation of your family and friends have had an impact on how you manage and navigate relationships in adulthood?
Well, I think we often have like role models and people we see engage with relationships and they impact us. Again, I think for me, a lot of the things I observed from my family were negatives that I had to learn to unpack. The way they kind of deal with each other, gossiping, kind of being short or quick, not talking to people in a loving way, or actually more like talking at people versus talking with people. So learning to unpack that and actually have conversations with people. Also with, friends, you start to learn like their talking patterns and what they might need in order to communicate. It's not my job to give them advice or tell them what to fix about themselves, but I can learn to communicate with them based on their behavioral sort of actions. So yeah, I do agree in the sense with Bandura that, we model our behaviors off of other people. I think as you get older and you become more self-assured, that's less. You switch into a role where you're more focused on yourself. But I definitely think a younger age, especially teenage, going into early 20s, you are modeling relationships. A lot of what you see in TV and movies of adults around you, successful relationships that you see are what you deem as a successful relationship.
And finally, what have you found that led you to be most successful in relationships in adulthood?
I would say learning to love myself and enjoy who I am as a person. Until I was I didn't have really a successful romantic relationship that I have now. I've been with my partner for 13 years. It's because I learned to love myself. It wasn't until I realized like I'm okay with who I am and I'm a work in progress and I'm okay with that. As soon as I made that decision, I was like, I don't need anybody. I love myself. Found somebody right after that and we clicked. So I think that's the biggest thing is really just learning who you are and learning to be okay with who you are and the fact that you're going to change. Learning to love the 1,000 versions of yourself you're going to be throughout your life.
That's perfect. Thank you so much, Mr. Garden.
Thank you.
All right, my name is Emery Martinez.
And I'm Lori Farias.
I'll be interviewing Ms. Farias for the interview today. All right, so first question I got is, in my research, I found that the way our parents interact with us at a young age affect how we give an accept love. Do you find that to be evident in yourself?
I think so. Yes. You want me to explain? Well, I had a father figure when I was young who kind of abandoned me, and that has affected how I accept or expect men to treat me. It's taken me a really long time to trust men, and I still don't completely. I always expect them to leave.
And in my research, the authors argue that in accordance to Erickson's theory of psychosocial development, identity versus confusion, it is vital to build a sense of self before having a successful relationship. Do you find that to be true in yourself?
Oh, absolutely. Right out of high school, I got married. And I don't think I knew who I was, and I think I just did it for security reasons. And because I didn't know who I was or have a sense of self, I accepted treatment that I shouldn't have accepted. He was abusive. And once I left him and just figured out who I was and accepted myself, then I was able to love and be loved as I should be.
That's amazing to hear. And in accordance to Bandura's social cognitive theory, which states that individuals develop skills and behaviors through observation, what behaviors have you developed through observation of your friends and family that have had an impact on how you manage and navigate relationships in adulthood?
Oh, that was hard. I think, especially from my grandparents, they had long-lasting relationships. And I think they kind of showed me what it is to work through problems and to be partners and to become friends on top of just being in love. So I think I learned from my grandparents.
That's amazing to hear. And finally, what have you found led you to be most successful in relationships and adulthood?
What have I found that helps with being successful? I think it took me a long time to understand that love should feel good, that it shouldn't be painful, and it shouldn't make you insecure. And once I realized that, and I realized that you've got to be friends with your partner. You can love somebody, but you also have to be friends. I think those are the things that are most important. And I believe that, at least for me, being in a good relationship means that you don't have to be anything other than yourself. Like, we can be quiet together and not speak, not because we're angry, just because we're quiet. And that's okay. And it's okay to be us.
All right. You guys heard it here first. Enjoy the little things and accept the love you deserve. Hello, my name is Emery Martinez.
Hi, I'm Steve Copal.
And I will be interviewing Copal for my project today. So first question will be, in my research, I found that the way our parents interact with us at a young age affect how we give and accept love. Do you find that to be true in yourself?
Yes, I was just kind of thinking back to when I was growing up and kind of how that interaction happened. I think I was in a good spot with my family, with my parents, and I think, ask the last part of the question again, because there's something I think I want to add to this or share with this relevant.
I found that the way our parents interact with us at a young age affect how we give and accept love. Do you find that to be true in yourself?
So the way they interact with us, I do find that. But then when my parents divorced, when they separated, that had a pretty devastating effect. So it was fine, everything was good, and then that happened, and then that did change the dynamic a bit. So that had a big effect on me.
In my research, the authors argued that in accordance to Erickson's theory of psychosocial development, identity versus role confusion, it is vital to build
What is it again? Identity what?
Identity versus role confusion.
Okay.
And it is vital to build a sense of self before having a successful relationship. Do you find that to be true in yourself?
Yes. And I think that's why kind of first relationships and early relationships kind of have issues. And I think that people get into relationships for the wrong reasons because of that. I think they stay in them for the wrong reasons because of that. And here I am, 66 years old, and I'm probably just starting to figure it out, and have a much better sense of self. And in fact, this is the first time I've been married, but the person I'm married to now is the longest lasting one because I have that better sense of self and that better sense of herself too, and being respectful of those boundaries.
Perfect. And in accordance to Bandura's social cognitive theory, which states that individuals develop skills and behaviors through observation, what behaviors have you developed through observation of your family and friends that have impacted how you manage and navigate relationships in adulthood?
So by seeing how they interact with me or interact with each other, or what would you say, observe?
Just observation of how they interact with you, how they interact with other friends, how your parents interact with each other, how your parents interact with other adults. Like, how have those developed skills within yourself or other behaviors within yourself that have impacted how you manage and navigate relationships?
And it's funny because I think that sometimes I can be maybe a little much sometimes for people. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's kind of how I perceive it. And I think the observations that I'm trying to think as far as, I don't know that I've ever really thought of that, how I've kind of taken that information in. Certainly there is that, like, one thing I do notice sometimes is how my wife Amy interacts with her children and her grandchildren and with her sisters. They're not our children, they're hers. And I kind of see a different dynamic with her, with them, than I tend to see with me. And I have learned kind of just how, special those relationships are to her, and give her a lot of room and a lot of space to see them when she wants and spend as much time with them as she wants, and not feel kind of challenged or kind of singled out or excluded. But that's taken me a little bit. But the one thing too that I've kind of understood over the course of the years is I'm really independent. And that's been hard kind of for her to deal with. So the observations she's made through kind of being that way is kind of then led to her being more independent, which is kind of cool. She really likes that.
Have you found that her interactions with her grandchildren have an effect on how you interact with your students?
No, it's funny. No, I don't think it factors in or has even kind of crossed my mind at all. But what has happened through watching her interactions with her grandchildren is I'm much more appreciative and kind of understanding of little kids. Like, I do not want to teach elementary school, not ever. But through Amy's interactions with her she's got one just graduated college, and the youngest one, she has 9, the youngest one is probably 4. So I've really come to appreciate and enjoy the younger kids through her and the way she interacts with them. I've kind of come to an understanding and kind of a different kind of love for them than I did before.
All right, perfect. And finally, what have you found to let you be most successful in relationships in adulthood?
Say that again?
Finally, what have you found to let you be most successful in relationships in adulthood?
Insisting on time by myself. And having that be okay with the other person. I think that's the hardest thing. It's just like I said earlier, I'm really independent. I like nothing better than actually being by myself. Which, if you're in a marriage, that can kind of put people off a little bit. But, and again, that was something that Amy had to adjust to. But it's funny because she's retired this year, and every few weeks she tells me she's going to be gone for a week to 10 days to 3 weeks because she's doing something with her kids or grandkids, and I am just as happy as can be. It's like, oh, cool, I got all this time to myself. That's been the biggest thing, understanding that I have to have that and having my partner accept that.
All right, perfect. Thank you so much. You guys heard it here first. Take some time to yourself.